Weren't sure who would go to what workshop or how many people we'd have, so I'm just going to give you a general background to our work, because I don't know how much you know about us. But the Good Counsel Network was founded in 1997. We're a Catholic pro-life counselling centre, but open to people of all faiths and no faith. We've seen thousands of women since we were originally set up, and we know of about 4,000 women who have kept their baby, many of whom, the women that we were seeing, particularly in our earliest years, were often very much set on abortion. So that's quite a lot of women that we've seen who've come to us very abortion-minded, who have changed their mind. So it's becoming harder and harder to do very active pro-life work. Morning. So our centre, as I was saying, we run a Catholic pregnancy centre in central London and see women from all different backgrounds. But it's becoming harder to do any kind of active, direct interaction with women who are abortion-minded, because everything that we do that's actually successful in reaching these women soon gets shut down. So our advertising is quite limited. We're only allowed to use certain terms. There's very strict regulations about what we must say in our adverts. And then the actual vigils themselves that we have outside the abortion centres. As you probably know, there's a national buffer zone, which means we have to be 150 metres down the road. And what's been the result of this? Well, from our point of view, the result has been that we were seeing hundreds of women who would come to us looking for help to keep their baby, who can now not find us or know that we're there. We still do have some turnarounds, remarkably, because we're so far away, but obviously a number of women who would have once met us outside the abortion centres don't even find out about us until after the abortions happened now. And then the counselling work itself in our centre, we're just seeing less women coming in because less women are being reached at the abortion centres, less women are being reached through advertising, online, everything. I mean, you'll notice even posts that March for Life put up. Every post that has anything mentioning abortion will come up online with a little box under it saying the NHS provides abortion services, and sometimes even linking directly to numbers. So what we've actually seen is that in some places where we had vigils, take Twickenham for an example, where we would have had maybe 50, 60, 70 women choose life in a year, come to us for help. There is no vigil permitted within about 15 minutes walk of the abortion centre in Twickenham currently. And additional to that, there are now 2 abortion centres offering abortion to women because they're so busy. We actually saw a considerable drop in abortions while we were out there praying, but the number of abortions has gone through the roof, especially with the advent of the abortion pill at home. So it's become more and more difficult for anyone to reach out to these women and have direct conversations with them. But I'm still going to go through the kind of things that you should bear in mind when you're having these interactions. We do, as I say, still have some turnarounds at the vigils. And anyway, in normal life, there are often opportunities where we will come across pregnant women, women considering abortion, partners of women considering abortion. So I want to talk about men's role in impacting that. First of all, I want to say that I've met many pro-life men down the years outside of my centre at events, pro-life events, but also in the centre with women who are coming for abortion. And these are men who really don't want the woman to have an abortion. But obviously, I have to say, the first necessary quality in a pro-life man is to be chaste and to maybe consider about the relationships that he's in if he wants to respect life, because outside of marriage, your chances of your partner having an abortion if she gets pregnant, regardless of what you want, are extremely high. Within marriage, if you're married to somebody who has very different views than you, different religious background or different moral views, is high. And even women who are very apparently pro-life can sometimes change completely when they become pregnant. So you really have to know what your, what your spouse's whole view of life is. If you're using contraception, the chances of contraception failing are high over time, particularly. I mean, in the first year you're using it, maybe not so much, and then later more and more. Of course, men, like women, have been hugely lied to about these things. Women, and young women especially, women in school who are given contraceptives so they can continue their relationship without their parents finding out, or continue their their college courses without the interruption of a pregnancy, often find that that does not really work out for them. We saw a young Muslim woman who was told by her school nurse to use condoms so that her parents would not find out that she was in this relationship. It was only a matter of weeks before she conceived, and the school nurse to her said, well, they do have a failure rate, but her life was completely ruined by that, really, because she then had to think about either leaving home or having an abortion, both of which were things she did not want to do. So, second to that, I think obvious points. I think men know these things and they get patronised a lot about them, but I'm going to say them because it's a men's conference and we're talking about what men can and can't do and have a good impact. Obviously, things that women can sometimes do without them seeming threatening or in any way intimidating, men cannot always do. So outside an abortion centre, women will sometimes take a girl for a coffee or walk down the road along with her as she's leaving the abortion centre, maybe after being given the pills but having not taken them. But men doing the same thing can often be seen as stalkers, intimidating. So men really have to think about not just the actions and their intention behind them, but how the woman particularly can perceive them, and other people as well, because they can get in trouble. But the more important thing is how this is going to feel to the woman you're actually trying to engage with. So one thing I can say is asking permission before you do anything. May I walk a few steps with you, or may I enter into conversation with you if the woman is there and you're able to engage with her, but you're not sure what her feelings are. I think it's better for a man to be just really polite and ask for permission to engage. But I think once you get into conversation with a woman, really, like for anybody, intense listening is what's required. Listening with the heart and praying. We recommend praying to the Holy Spirit, asking the intercession of the guardian angel of the woman, of the man involved, and of the baby. Asking for the grace to understand the real needs of the situation. So deep listening, that's something that everybody needs to practice if they want to make an impact on the woman. There's a good book by 40 Days for Life, I think it's called something like What to Say When, and it's answers to questions outside an abortion centre that you might get from women. But like all books like that, there's loads of things in that book where they say, don't say this and don't say that. But I think if you're really listening sincerely and you're really praying and you're not just trying to put yourself in, but you're trying to really talk to the situation, sometimes there are things that nobody would recommend you to say that are just the right thing in this circumstance. So you have to be cautious, but it's really important to listen and to pray. I was outside an abortion centre recently. When I say outside, I mean 150 metres away, when a man approached us and started telling us off about the posters we have and why we were there. Now, the poster we have two actually. One says, women and children deserve better than abortion. And the other one says, pregnant, worried, and it has a list of help we can provide, housing help, financial help, ongoing moral support, baby clothes, baby goods, this kind of thing. So this man started going absolutely crazy and eventually trying to grab the posters and smash them up. And he said, we were just there to provoke. So there was a young priest there and he said to the man, why do you feel that? Let's look at the posters together. But of course, this man was too angry to look at anything. So he began shouting, and he said particularly women and children deserve better than abortion was very provocative. There was no good reason for it being there. He also said we don't actually give any help and we're just making this up. But this poster really bothered him. And finally he said that he and his girlfriend had been there a week earlier for an abortion, and he was very, very angry. But it became more and more apparent that he could not see what was on the poster. I mean, he could not read it or take it in. And the reason why that particular poster, women and children deserve better than abortion, was angering him, I felt, was because he also felt in his own heart that that was the case. And he was obviously very hurt. The priest was really good with him. Nothing the priest said could calm him down. But the priest just kept on honestly and gently witnessing to him that a life is a life from conception, and that women and children do deserve better, and that he would be praying for him and for his girlfriend, and continuing to show him love and mercy and nothing but that. But this man was not yet ready to accept that. But that doesn't mean that the priest's attitude, his calmness, his gentleness didn't get through to him and will not have any impact on him in the long run. I think we have to learn when we're in discussion not to respond to every question. Not every question is sincere. And you can get on and on and on into debates and micro debates. And that's not what we're there for. We're there to just witness to the sanctity of life and that there is support available and to direct women onto that. I think men have a really important role to play because these women have often experienced nothing good from men. Not always true. You know, some of the women we see have a really good man with them who really wants to keep the baby, but they're often very hurt and brutalised already, and they just, you know, can't see the wood for the trees at that point. And they can rightly say, you know, this is the wrong time, it's a bad time for me, from a human point of view. But of course, we believe that if this child has been sent into their life, that with the right support and help, they can have a good outcome, and we just need to keep on offering that. We can't make anybody do anything, but we can just keep on making them aware of help and support, and the fact that, you know, there are options in this pregnancy. They can choose to keep their baby, they can choose to have the baby and give the baby up for adoption, but we don't believe that abortion can ever be the right option. So getting into endless debate is definitely not the answer. Sticking to your main points and not being drawn off into other points is a very important part of what we need to do. There's been 10 million abortions in this country, and they're still telling men to be quiet, and I don't think that men need to be quiet. We don't believe that, you know, it's my choice and it's my body. The baby's body is the baby's body, and the men and women involved in the decision of abortion both need to speak up for the right to life of the child. I just want to talk about two men that I've seen just as an example. So we had one man who rang up to say that him and his girlfriend had been trying to have a child for years, and finally they got onto the list for IVF. Not that I agree with IVF because of the destruction of life that ensues from it, for one thing. But anyway, it's widely available now. They managed to finally get onto the list, and she had IVF. Within 5 days of having a successful pregnancy implanted, she suddenly had a kind of a bit of a breakdown and said, I can't possibly have a baby at this time, and booked for an abortion. Her husband was frantic, and he couldn't believe this had happened. And he said, you know, I know her really well, and I think, you know, as soon as she's had this, she's going to regret it. But he said she's gone out of her mind at the moment. I don't know who she is. And he could not do anything legally. He had no legal right to stop her from having the abortion, which she did go on to have. Meanwhile, the other end of the scale, we see women who come in, and in one example, the woman's partner, she couldn't really call him her partner or boyfriend because they weren't that together, but he ran up a bill of thousands of pounds on her mobile phone, and he told her if she had the abortion, he would pay it. But if she didn't have the abortion, he would not pay it. And she had no money. We offered her lots of help, and she seemed to be choosing life for her baby, and then she just had a bad day and went and had the abortion. And she rang him up to tell him that she'd done this, and he said to her, why did you kill our kid? And she was absolutely devastated by this. So, you know, men have a real role to play here. Good pro-life men who can witness to women what a good man is have a really important role to play. And it's one of the reasons we have counsellors for both sexes in our centre. And I'm going to hand over to Stuart now, who is one of our counsellors.
Good morning. Just briefly, before going on to people we've seen individually, I'm just going to mention briefly online. Hopefully none of you spend any time on social media. If you know any other people who waste their time on social media, like myself, I see lots of debates of people on Facebook and Twitter. That's where I am, and other people will be in other places. And you'll often see somebody who makes a brilliant, cutting, pro-life argument that wins the argument online. And you see that and you think, fantastic. But actually it's really good when debating online, or arguing online, however you want to think about it, to just step back just before you put the brilliant answer up and take into consideration that the person you're arguing with might not be a rabid pro-abortion activist. They might be somebody who's hurting after one or more abortions that they or their partners have had. And that they're arguing to justify something they've done. So having the clever, quick response about when the baby's heart starts beating or whatever the clever answer is might not be the thing that helps them. One thing that helped me was noticing one day I was about to argue with somebody, and I thought, I wonder who this person is. I'd never heard of them. And I looked on Twitter, and they had 250,000 followers. I still don't know who the person is, but I thought, I don't want to get into this argument with this person who's got all of these followers who are all going to be watching this and are all coming from so many different backgrounds. When I'm talking one-to-one to somebody, like near an abortion centre, it's a very different thing to when you're online. So when you're online, do think about the bigger picture of how many other people are listening, what the person's real problems are, and praying about what you do, what your response is to those people. I think always when you're on social media, every couple of days, share a Rachel's Vineyard post, post-abortion retreats, share good counsel, pregnant, worried, help. You never know who will see that. Okay, that's online dealt with. Thinking about some of the men that I've come across over the years in various locations, one that sticks in my mind is a man who wasn't going for an abortion. He was a businessman. He worked in Bedford Square, and he worked in the office next door to an abortion centre. It was a huge abortion centre, and it was the second 40 Days for Life campaign in Britain was outside that abortion centre. The abortion centre has since closed down, and the day after it closed down, Mass was offered in the centre by a priest who'd already said Mass 6 or 7 years before in thanksgiving for the closure of that abortion centre. At that Mass, he said, obviously it hasn't closed, but we are trusting that it will close because we'd had this novena of prayer. And anyway, these years later, he was inside the former abortion centre celebrating Mass. I went there one lunchtime, and they asked me would I counsel, so I was at the door, back in the day when we could be at the door, and a chap came out of the building. I can't repeat a single word that he said to me. He was a nice, respectable, elderly gent, grey hair, absolute tirade of abuse, swear word. It was just unbelievable. And as he walked off, I thought, great. Somebody came over who was praying and said, oh, sorry, I should have mentioned him. He comes out every lunchtime, and he'll be back in half an hour. And I thought, brilliant. And I prayed a lot during that half an hour, thinking, please. And the really strange thing is, he came up, and as he came up, I said something to him. And I honestly cannot tell you what I said. And at the time, people said to me, what did you say to him? And I said, I don't actually remember. What he did was he stopped and stared at me, and he said, you have no idea what it is like to take your daughter into a building like that. Tears in his eyes, and into the building he went. And he never was abusive to any of our volunteers for the rest of 40 Days for Life. He'd always come out of the office, turn left to avoid them. He had a huge burden that he was unloading on us. And we found out why. And it's nice for him to be able to unload that burden. And sometimes you do just have to accept that. St. Thomas Aquinas says that often the first reaction to truth is anger. His reaction to the truth of what we were saying just by standing there was that. That was very much the case. A lot of the time in the previous talk, the gentleman talked about the fact that women will not always understand the silence of men when he is the father of her child. And I can say that through our counselling centre, we've seen thousands of women, slightly less men because the boyfriends or husbands don't always come with them. The most common thing when you speak to the woman and you ask her, what did your boyfriend or husband say when he found out you were pregnant? The most common answer that the boyfriend or husband gives is, I will support you whatever you do. Which is about the worst thing he could possibly say. It sounds great if you take it in any other context. But for her, saying, I'll support you whatever you do, actually says to the woman, I don't want this baby. Because if you want the baby, you don't say to the woman, I'll support you going for the abortion. I mean, you just don't. Okay? So it's disastrous. Even if the man doesn't particularly think, and I think there's a lot of men this is the case, he's not necessarily thinking, I want you to have the abortion, but he is held back by the societal view that it's the woman, she's pregnant, I just need to support her, it's her choice, it's all about her. It's not. It's both of their babies. So he does need to say things. An example of somebody who came to us, Catholic man, married, wife was pregnant. He got the shock of his life because as soon as she found out she was pregnant, she said, well, obviously we have to go for the abortion. And he thought, what do you mean obviously? He said, well, my career. I mean, we've not having children yet. So he was quite surprised. His family were a bit reserved, very nice, polite, quiet people. Her family were very aggressive, telling him that, you must just take your wife for the abortion. who are you to say anything? It's her body, it's not your choice. So his father-in-law was telling him, it's like, sorry, a man is telling you what to do about this woman, but you're not allowed to say what this woman's allowed to do. Okay. He phoned us and we said, okay, no, you are allowed to talk to your wife about things that are in relationship to you and your wife and your child. It's about the two of you. And actually, it's not about your in-laws. And to be honest, it's nice not to offend them, but if you're going to not offend them at the cost of the life of your child, then sorry, but go and offend your in-laws. I'm pleased to say he did offend his in-laws. He thanked us profoundly. He was really surprised. He's a really nice chap. And he was really surprised to find that it's okay to disagree with your wife. The idea had never entered his head. She's not listening, it's okay. But it was on a fundamental thing. Had she wanted to paint the room yellow or blue, who cares? It should be blue for Cardiff City, but it doesn't really matter, okay? But my child lives or dies, I'm going to leave that to my wife and in-laws. No, you can't leave that to your wife and in-laws. Anyway, they have a baby, and I don't know where he is now. He's tall, so he's good. You do get the other men, and sometimes this again can be confusing. And again, women, it can be very hard for women to understand men. Men and women are different. Lots of nodding. The wife will nod sagely. There's very little that we don't differ on in some way or other, and understanding each other is the one thing that we're united on. We don't understand each other. Okay, we had a girl who came to us, and she was quite adamantly going to have the abortion that she did not want because of her boyfriend. And he was the other extreme. He wasn't the I'll support you whatever you do. It was you're going for an abortion. Okay, you're not ruining my life. And so he was determined that she'd have the abortion. And I counselled them. And at the end, I just can't ever forget it. I can even see the room where we were sitting. He said to her finally, he said, okay, if you're not going for the abortion, I'm going to get up, I'm going to walk out of here, and the next thing you receive from me will be a text message with a photograph of my new girlfriend, and then I will block you and you will never hear from me again. So it was quite full on forcing us to have the abortion. I was less discouraged because I thought if he really was just going to abandon her, he'd just get up and walk out. He'd also told us about his previous life where he had been married to a woman who'd already had children, and he was still supporting those children, although he'd split up from his wife. And it was clear to me he was somebody who couldn't just walk away. I really thought that if she keeps the baby, how much contact he will or won't have with them, I don't know, but it won't be nothing. Anyway, he never sent her the photograph of the new girlfriend. He did get up and walk out. And a few weeks later, he came around with a few bags of shopping to her house and said, are you okay? She said, yes. And they carried on with some form of contact, at least. So it's complicated, what you can say, what you can't say. The main thing to do is pray. And also bear in mind, you don't always know what the person thinks that you're speaking to. So praying and asking God what to say. I always think that one in Bedford Square, I don't remember what I said. And it's one of those rare occasions where I think God just said it. And the chap reacted really well, and that went really well. All make sure that you've got a phone number for the Good Counsel Network. We have a stall in there. All make sure you've got a phone number for Rachel's Vineyard, post-abortion counselling. Because you never know where you'll be sitting somewhere and somebody will say something and you need to have a phone number to give to them then. Because it might be that you don't ever see the person again. Or it might be that the opportunity, the opening isn't there. So always have those things available. Pray for all the women we see, because we do see women in terrible situations where the counsellor will sit there sometimes and you finish counselling the woman, you might be in there for 2 or 3 hours, and at the end of it you think, I've no idea what we can do to help you keep this baby. You know, you are in what is almost an impossible situation. You know, is it my husband's baby or is it my boyfriend's baby? And particularly if there's a racial mix there that's not going to correspond to one half of the couple or the other, that makes it much more complicated. And you do sit in the counselling room thinking, I don't have a practical solution. If somebody comes and says, I have nowhere to live, we'll find them somewhere to live. The other thing to say, if you do come across somebody in your life who is pregnant and is worried and doesn't have support, don't think you have to do it all. Phone us while you're sitting with the person. Put them on the phone with us. That's the other thing. Giving our phone number is good, but the person may never phone us. So actually phone us and say, Stuart, I was at your talk. Jill is sitting here in the office and she will have nowhere to live tonight because she's pregnant. Put her on the phone.
Is that throughout the whole country?
Yeah, you can phone us from anywhere.
Yeah,
you can phone from anywhere.
You can sort things out,
Yeah.
home or whatever,
Yeah.
like that, because obviously a lot of it's to do around the south, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're based in London, but we help people all over the place. Last week we were helping somebody in Glasgow, which is nowhere near London. And if somebody, we've even had phone calls from abroad and emails from abroad, and we've been able to help people there as well. So we are there to help. Last thing I'll say, our stall is just through there. Please do take some of the literature, sign up, get a free badge, and keep in touch, and definitely pray for our work.
Just one thing,
Yep.
we've been after a placard with the number on, and
Yep.
we haven't got one so far.
Write it on the board and I'll deal with it on Monday when I'm in the office. Sign up on the board and we can get you one sent.
Yeah, as long as we can get a placard when,
Yep.
when we're on the line,
Yeah.
hold it up, because people are obviously, as you
Yep.
say, walking through.
I mean, just thinking about with the telephone number,
All we need
probably.
is a
Yeah.
placard with the number on.
Yeah, and we'll put the list of help as well.
Something
Yeah.
plus something on.
Actually, just the really nice one with one of our placards has got to be Central London Abortion Clinic. Woman went in, she was quite angry, she didn't want a leaflet, she was outraged that these people were there. She went upstairs and she sat in the waiting room, she was horrified of these disgusting people. She was going for her abortion and how dare they. And she looked out the window and thought, I'm going to take a photograph. Look, there's a priest there. She took this angry photograph. Then she looked at the photograph and saw the little placard with our phone number on that listed the help that she needed because she was going for an abortion, because she had genuine reasons that were forcing her to go for an abortion. Anyway, she phoned us, keeping the baby. The priest, we phoned the priest and told him, because she showed us the photograph, we knew what priest it was, and he was thrilled, and he said, imagine standing there when a woman who was going for an abortion kept her baby. It's miraculous. And we said she didn't keep her baby. She kept her babies. She was expecting twins, although she didn't know it that day. And her twins have since been born. So pray for our work. Pray for everybody you know. Bear in mind that 1 in 3 of the people you see around you in your everyday life has had an abortion, or somebody they know has had an abortion.
How often do you get calls, and is it the majority men or women?
It's mostly women who phone us. It's a small number of men who will phone looking for some, in a desperate situation like that chap I mentioned. It's much more likely to be women phoning us, usually because a man has let them down in one way or another, to be honest. But we're quite happy when the girl comes, we'll try and get the boyfriend or partner to come, because whatever he thinks, he is going to have the biggest influence on her decision of anybody around her. Yeah. Any other questions?
Perhaps this is a micro debate part, but the common one that is in terms of abuse seems to be the one that represents itself or presents itself. How would you respond?
You mean people who are pregnant because of abuse?
Yes.
Yeah. I had a Labour councillor at the door recently trying to get me to vote for them on the 7th of May. And I said, well, I only vote on this issue. She said, it's not a local issue, but... And she said, what about the case of rape? So I said, okay, so all abortions are wrong and we'll ban them all except in the case of rape. Is that what your position is? She said, no, I want abortion on demand. I said, you can't use the women who've been raped to justify all of these other abortions that you're talking about. Actually, just to plug our blog, my son, who's on the next panel, I think downstairs, wrote a very good blog. So if you go onto our website, you'll find it there. How pro-life vigils changed my life. And he talks about friends he's got whose mothers were raped and their children are around. They're his friends, they're people. My life, your life, nobody's life is any less valuable because of the way they were conceived, you know. And I think rape is a terrible thing, you know. Men deserve to be severely punished for it, but their children don't deserve to be punished for it. Also, the one study on women who got pregnant during rape, the majority of women wanted to continue the pregnancy, but felt that people around them wouldn't accept that they had been raped. And we've seen cases of that, where everyone says, well, if you're not going for an abortion, you clearly weren't raped. So, yeah.